Creepypastas. You've all heard of them, and you've probably seen a few of them yourself. I assume so, that's probably why you're watching this video. The genre has been very pivotal in many people's lives, especially in the internet culture, and for a lot of us growing up. Specifically, me. If I didn't get traumatized by creepypastas in like 2009, I probably wouldn't be making weird YouTube videos in 2022. Wait, it's 2023, shoot. 2023. So it's either a good thing or a bad thing. I'll let you decide. But in this video, I want to take a deep dive into the creepypastas of the early 2000s and the late 2010s, and I want to take a retrospective look on how they shaped an entire generation's interests into horror and the macabre and that sort of thing. Pretty much how they traumatized an entire generation. From the expansive lore of the Marble Hornets to the horrifying real-life crimes that the creator of The Laughing Jack has done, these are the creepypastas of our childhood that you might have forgotten about and what's happened to them in the last 10 plus years. Enjoy! Mariana Mordegard Glesgorv. That is a mouthful. A horrifying video appeared on YouTube on April 18th of 2008. It shows a man sitting in front of a camera for just over 2 minutes, doing absolutely nothing, but staring demonically into the lens. And he goes from just blankly staring at this camera for the first 2 minutes to then demonically smiling for the last few seconds of the video, and his face contorts in strange ways, and overall it's just a very disturbing show. Now, the lore of this creepypasta goes that after the original video was posted, over 150 people gouged out their eyeballs after witnessing what this man was doing. The smile. Not only did they gouge their own eye sockets out, they then put their eyeballs in boxes and mailed them to YouTube headquarters, which is just a funny little prank, I would say. But it's safe to say this one's absolutely gross. This is the story of the Mariana Mordegard Glesgorv creepypasta. On that fateful day in April of 2008, viewers stumbled upon the video that I just described to you. The video is admittedly haunting and very disturbing, especially for kids who might have had unsupervised internet access in 2008. I'm talking to myself right now, and you little gremlins. As for literally 2 minutes straight, this off-putting man just stares holes right through the camera. And the video is disturbing for other reasons as well, like the lighting and the color of it all. It's just red, and there's just really weird music playing in the background, and strange sound effects. It's just very off-putting. It's not normal. And then at the end of the video, when the face is made, that's like the icing on top of the cake. It's just very, very weird. Now, at first, viewers didn't really know if this was a creepypasta or just like another strange video from 2008 YouTube. Trust me, there was a lot of strange videos in 2008 on YouTube. But that's when the lore of this creepypasta became apparent. The story goes that YouTube took down the original video and has since only uploaded small snippets of that video in order to quell any conspiracy theories about its existence. So it's kind of like they're saying, yeah, it existed. We're not purposely hiding it from you. Here's a 10-second clip. That's what they're doing. This came after an apparent YouTube employee watched the video, and then 45 seconds after they watched the video, they started violently screaming and just thrashing out at their coworkers and everybody else in the building. And then apparently YouTube had to sedate this man, and he has since forgotten everything. A quote from a witness of this man freaking out says, "The other people who were in the same room as him while he viewed it and turned off the video for him say that they all heard at the same time a high-pitched drilling noise, and none of them dared to look at the screen." So this YouTube guy was watching the video, he freaks out. The people around him were also like, whoa, that guy's freaking out. So they tried to turn the computer off, and while they were doing that, they heard this weird drilling noise, which they assumed is something weird on the screen. Turn it off, they get the guy sedated, and he forgets everything. As for the original uploader, they've never been found. In fact, their IP address didn't seem to exist. They just didn't have one. Their face was also never identified, and the man remains an anomaly to this day, which kind of adds to the intrigue of it all. You know, sometimes you don't need to know everything. And as far as we know, there were no eyes or bodies that were actually maimed in this video, or maimed because of this video. It's all just part of the creepypasta lore. But in a strange twist of events, some people on Reddit claim that that's not the case. Are we shocked? Reddit user Official Technic says, quote, "I'll keep you updated. I've got my left eye out." End quote. And many other Redditors expressing how bizarre and just downright scary this video is. But then again, Reddit really isn't necessarily the best source of information. But overall, the themes of this creepypasta are Pretty simple. I mean, you watch the video, you look at it, you see the face, you hear the sound effects, you go crazy, you start cutting your eyes out and mailing them to YouTube. It's a very simple concept, you see. And for adults who watch this, you know, they saw right through it. They saw it was a creepypasta, they saw it was just a weird internet video. But for children who had just gotten their first iPad or first phone or something for that Christmas, when they saw this and they saw the lore behind it of people, you know, gouging their eyes out and like ripping their tongues out and stuff, yeah, they might have been freaked out. They were freaked out. I was one of them, and it probably melted a little part of their tiny brains. As far as the title of the video, Mariana Mordegar Glesgorv, it appears to be vaguely foreign sounding, but it just means nothing. It's like gibberish in every single language, so that mystery hasn't been solved either. This creepypasta still has a ton of questions that need to be answered, like who's the man in the video, who uploaded it, why was it created, and who would sit down in front of a screen for 2 minutes and look like that, and then make those faces. I don't know. If you have any answers, leave them in the comments below. But that was the story of the Mariana Mordegar Glesgorv creepypasta from 2008. The Laughing Jack. Now, a worthy place on this list goes to the Laughing Jack, an unnerving story that begins in the 1800s about a little boy hanging out with his imaginary doll friend, whose name is Jack. That is, until the boy grows up and becomes a depraved serial killer, and he forgets about his good old friend Jack. He left him back at his house in a box. You've all probably heard it before, but nevertheless, this is the story of the Laughing Jack, and the weirdo that the author actually turned out to be. Like, wow, dude. A little boy named Isaac received a colorful fun doll as a Christmas present one year. The doll looked like a Jack-in-the-Box toy and was said to have an emulation ability where it could emulate the personality of its owner. So if the owner was like happy or whatever, it would look happy, and if the owner was like mad, it would look mad. And because of this, Jack quickly became a staple in Isaac's life. I mean, he's a little boy growing up. He's got a doll. Nothing too out of the ordinary. For years, Isaac would play with a doll all the time, until eventually he got too old and he started to move out and go on with his life, and he went to boarding school. When he went to boarding school, he of course left his doll behind, because I don't think you want to bring a doll to boarding school, but he left Jack in a dusty old box. Over the next few years, several things would happen. Isaac would become a twisted, sadistic killer and end up having multiple victims, maiming them, capturing them, all that stuff. And Jack would sit in that storage box and become dull and sour over the years, angry at Isaac for leaving him behind. And eventually, just like the doll was originally supposed to do, he matched the personality of his owner. And now Isaac is a depraved serial killer. Jack is a depraved serial killer. One day, the Jack doll was released from his box and he escaped the house he was in. He was taller and more human-like and dangerous now. He seemed to have morphed into something beyond a doll. The doll then goes on a mission to hunt down his old owner and, of course, show Isaac a taste of his own medicine. You know, Isaac was a serial killer now, and Jack was going to teach him that lesson using his own tactics. And, you know, to pay him back for leaving him alone in a dusty attic for years, and to punish him for literal murder. Now, after the Laughing Jack dismembers Isaac, he would then move on to other kids, because, you know, he was still the personality of Isaac, a depraved sociopath. He would befriend them, get their trust, and then, of course, end them in different ways. And this is when he started to have his modus operandi of shoving candy into the corpses of these poor kids. And it's said that every time he was about to do the deed, the Pop Goes the Weasel song would play in the immediate area, which is just pretty funny, to be honest. Like, imagine you see a doll walking towards you and then it's like, Pop goes. I'll start laughing. So that's how the original Laughing Jack story goes. That's the very first one, but the one you probably heard takes place in a more modern time. And this one involves a boy named James. Now, James was just a regular old kid until one day he was out in his mom's garden and he met Jack. And of course, Jack, being the stand-up guy that he is, you know, he offered to give James some candy. So pretty much the Laughing Jack was smuggling candy for this kid James. Kind of cool if you think about it, minus the killing part. Eventually, James's mom would get mad, you know, fed up, asking him where he got this candy from. You know, what's happening? James, of course, being naive, he just kept saying, you know, Jack gave it to me. This guy, my pal Jack outside. The only problem is, there was no Jack that the mom could see, so she thought that he was lying to her. And of course, the mom would keep getting more and more mad over the years that this candy thing kept happening, and eventually would all come to a boiling point when the Laughing Jack despawned a family dog named Fido. Rest in peace. But not only did he get rid of their family dog, their beloved Fido, he also stuffed the body with candy wrappers and candy. That's the famous Laughing Jack thing. The family was also, sad about this, and James was really angry at Jack for doing this, and eventually everything was just really tense and heated. The family didn't know why this was happening. James was mad at Jack. Jack was a depraved killer. A few days later, the mother goes out to the store, and she comes back to the house and stumbles upon a very grisly scene, to say the least. Her son James was nailed to a wall, dying, filled with candy. And of course, the Pop Goes the Weasel sound was playing in the background as well. I think it's safe to say at this point, any of us who watched this as kids were traumatized. We were checking under our beds and making sure that there was no dolls in sight, or at least I was. I could have been a wimp, I don't know. And that's where the story of the Laughing Jack pretty much ends. He goes on and tries to do this to more and more kids and befriend them and get rid of them and shove them full of candy. You know his thing. But in a dark twist of real life fate, the original author of the Laughing Jack, Stephen Akins, was outed on charges related to sending explicit images to underage fans, as well as an apparent racially motivated hate towards minorities online. His last known post on the internet was on his DeviantArt page in 2015, and nothing else has been heard of him since. We would just assume he's living a normal life. But I guess this does go to show that these depraved writings come from a very depraved man. And you always should look on the inside of the people that write the things that they do, because it might be darker than you can imagine. The Marble Hornets. Slenderman is arguably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, creepypasta in internet history. It was the first one to really blow up amongst everybody. And if you showed an old person who doesn't even know who this creepypasta is about a picture of Slenderman and we're like, who's this? They'd probably be like, oh, that's Slenderman. This pasta is so big and expansive and profound that it convinced two mentally unwell girls to try to kill their friend. That's how big it is. That's how real they thought it was. You can check out the Lore Lodge's video on those murders in the description below. It's a great video. He goes into like stupid depth in it. Check it out if you want to know all the details. Anyway, so it's not surprising that when a series that details this lore in a video format would end up taking off, and that's exactly what the Marble Hornets did. This is the story of the internet's first viral ARG. On June 20th, 2009, a YouTube channel named Marble Hornets uploaded a video called Introduction, which of course is the introduction to the ARG. The premise of the ARG is pretty simple, but it's also pretty complex at the same time. The entire thing is a group of tapes from a filming project that was directed by a guy named Alex Crayley, and the person who uploaded these clips to the Marble Hornets channel was a friend of Alex's. You see, Alex Crayley was making these films for a college project. He was a film student, he needed to make some films, he was interested in doing this, and that's how these tapes came to be. The film project was named Marble Hornets, and of course that's where the YouTube channel's name came as well. Everything was good and fine. There was about a year of shooting this film until one day he just randomly stopped production on the film, seemingly becoming angry and unapproachable and just downright hysterical almost. He fired the actors and got rid of all the props, and apparently his reasoning for doing this was unbearable set conditions, even though, the set was like a mile from his house. No one knew what the set conditions were until more and more videos started to surface. And that's when the person that uploaded these videos stepped in the picture. You see, Alex was just gonna destroy these tapes. He was done with it, he was fed up, he was just gonna trash them all and just get rid of them. But his friend from college, Jay, convinced him to not throw them away. I mean, this is like a year's worth of footage. Don't just randomly trash it. That doesn't make any sense. So Jay convinced Alex to let him have the clips, and Alex reluctantly agreed, because he just wanted them gone. Out of sight, out of mind. After Alex gave Jay these films, Alex mysteriously transferred schools, cut contact with everybody, and just got rid of all information about him, and he hasn't been heard from since. Which is weird because him and Jay were pretty close, and they were in school together in the same major, and he just skipped town. This left Jay with no choice but to upload the videos to YouTube to see what people would say about him, see if there was anything that could dissect about him. The videos all have comments disabled and everything like that, and there's no descriptions or anything, and all of that just adds to it, in my opinion. But there are over 8 hours of footage that make up about 87 clips uploaded to the Marble Hornets channel, each of them in chronological order from the beginning of the film project to the end. Each video clip is anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes long. Some of them are a little bit longer, some are a little bit shorter, and each one of them is to tell a piece of the story of what truly happened to Alex Alex Crayley. The main people involved in these videos were, of course, Alex, who is the filmmaker behind it all, Jay, who is the person who uploaded these clips to YouTube and college friend of Alex. Then there was Tim Wright, who is a Marble Hornets film actor, one of the actors in the film itself. Somewhere along the lines of filming the Marble Hornets, Tim's mind is overtaken by the entity, of course, that this creepypasta is about. Then there's Jessica Locke, who is a young woman that is in the season 2 and a minor character in season 3 as well of the entire film project. Then there's another YouTube channel called To The Ark, which is a mysterious, unreally documented channel that uploaded like response videos to these other films from the Marble Hornets project. It was run by a mysterious person or entity whom Jay theorized it was multiple people acting together, uploading these bizarre responses, and their true identity was never confirmed. Then there's Brian Thomas, who is another actor in the film. His motives are unknown, but he is literally in direct conflict with the filmmaker Alex. And lastly, the operator, who is an entity of unknown origin and unknown motivation. It's obviously Slenderman, pretty much. He first came into contact with Alex during his shooting of the Marble Hornets film, and eventually Jay encountered the operator, and ever since that, Jay's been running for his life, man, trying to figure out the mysterious connection between the operator, these other actors, the masks, and all that stuff. And of course, this is definitely based on Slenderman. The operator being another name for Slenderman. Slenderman? We say Enderman in Minecraft, not Enderman. I'll link a video in the description that's a deep dive into like every single Marble Hornets season and episode, but that would take about 5 hours, and I don't want this video to be 5 hours, so I'll let the professional deep divers do that. This is just the broad overview. Now, eventually, when the entire premise and reason for the Marble Hornets being a thing came out, it was discovered that Alex was just trying to catch the operator on camera because he was being stalked by it, and he was using this film project as some sort of way to do so. That's the most surface level, basic interpretation and just explanation. It goes so much deeper than that. I'll link the videos in the description. You can check them out there if you want to. Pretty much, Slenderman terrorizes a group of filmmakers and stalks them and turns them against each other. Pretty good explanation, I would say. Now, I remember watching these videos back in like 2011 and being freaked out as a little 9-year-old because like back then, things you saw on video seemed real. Like they were real. There was fake stuff, obviously, and there was like CGI, but it wasn't to the level that it is today. So if little kids, you know, they see these things in these videos and these ARGs and stuff back in the day, it was more likely that they thought they were real. I did. I mean, I literally thought these dudes were being haunted by some creature until I got a little bit older, of course. But I might do a future video about the Marble Hornets, like a really deep dive, an intrinsic look, if you will. And since 9 years ago when the last uploads were made, there's been no new information and no new news. On YouTube, at least, there has been several fan theories and fan canon that have spawned from the Marble Hornets stuff, and there's pretty much been like an entire fandom built around it that's still pretty active to this day. You can check that out if you want to as well. But yeah, that was the Marble Hornets ARG. Mr. Widemouth. Easing its way into this video is a classic horror story that haunted many a children in its day. Mr. Widemouth, the stuffed animal who tried to coerce children into harming themselves physically and mentally, but more physically. This one always made me and my friends check under our bed to make sure he wasn't down there. But back then, I didn't know the full story and full extent of the lore, so this is the story of the Mr. Widemouth creepypasta. Now, the pasta is told from the perspective of the narrator, who is a guy that was diagnosed with mononucleosis, or the kissing disease, as you might have heard it, when they were 5 years old. And pretty much this disease left this kid bedridden. He was really sick, couldn't leave his bed, and he was pretty lonely because of this. I would say you'd probably be lonely too if you were 5 and couldn't leave your bed. Shortly after the diagnosis, the boy gets a new friend, Mr. Widemouth. The boy thinks that Mr. Widemouth looks like a Furby toy. Y'all remember Furbies? They used to dance around and stuff, which, like, I guess he kind of does, but I don't really see it, dude. I don't know. After they get acquainted, Mr. Widemouth begins to talk to the boy every day, eventually developing a relationship with him. And the whole time this is going on, the doll is hiding underneath his bed to avoid being seen by his parents, because if they see him, you know, they get rid of him. He looks creepy. Everything was fine until one day, Mr. Widemouth told the boy to look outside of his bedroom window and to look down at the ground. Now, the bedroom window was 2 stories up, and the ground was just hard ground underneath. But Mr. Widemouth tried to convince this boy that if he jumped out of that window and imagined and dreamed hard enough that there was a trampoline under him, a trampoline would appear and it would form right beneath his feet at the last second, and that he would spring back up to the window and fly back in the room, no harm done. Luckily though, this boy said no, I'm not gonna jump out a window. That would hurt. But you can start to see where Mr. Widemouth was going. He literally wanted this kid to jump out a window and hurt himself. Or worse. Over the next few months, Mr. Widemouth would continue to try to lure this boy into doing dangerous stunts. Things like juggling knives, jumping off of the bed, jumping off of staircases, and at one point he tried to lure him out to the woods. Eventually one day the boy and his parents decide to move houses and get out of there. The boy gets into the truck to leave, he looks back up at the window one more time, and imagine who he sees standing in the window, smiling down at him. Mr. Widemouth, of course. Now after a few months of being moved out, the boy, who is now growing up more, the main boy in the story, he got pretty curious as to what happened, you know, to Mr. Widemouth. He was obviously in the house. So he goes back to the house where he was, and the house was nowhere to be found. It was actually burnt to the ground, to a crisp. The narrator decided to walk down the trail in the woods behind the house that Mr. Widemouth had tried to convince him to walk many years before, but the trail ended up taking him to a little memorial cemetery, a cemetery that was not there when he lived there. And it seemed that the tombstones belonged to young children. So yeah, you can pretty much guess what happened. The boy moves out, Mr. Widemouth stays, terrorizes and torments the next family that lives there, and actually ends up succeeding in unaliving their children, which is very, very sad and very, very just classic creepypasta-y, I guess. I mean, as a kid, I had no idea how dark this actually was. I mean, it's really dark. I just thought it was some weird stuffed animal that wanted kids to hurt themselves. I kind of forgot the part where the stuffed animal literally, like, killed a bunch of people and burned the house down. So yeah, that was pretty creepy. Anyways, that was the story of Mr. Widemouth, the Smile Dog. And finally, for this video, is my personal favorite creepypasta from the early 2000s. This, of course, is the smile.dog image that made all of us look differently at our dogs and made us slightly more scared of opening random attachments in emails. This is the story of the Smile Dog. The Smile Dog creepypasta was written way back in 2010 in April by Michael Lutz. For the longest time, nobody actually knew who wrote this creepypasta and who developed these images and stuff. It was kind of just like a up in the air thing, but it turned out to be Michael Lutz, or Warren is Dead, on 4chan. Now we figured out Lutz, or Warren is Dead, was the author because he went into great detail on a 4chan post about the entire creepypasta and pretty much gave the entire backstory to it, so it's pretty much a sure thing that it's him. Anyways, now for the actual story. Smile.dog, or smile.jpg, starts with an author, an amateur author to be specific, visiting an elderly woman who apparently has a story that the author can write about. You know, it's just this amateur author coming up, he needs to have stuff to write about. This lady says, "I got something for you." Boy, does she. When this author gets to the old woman's house and starts talking to the woman, he realizes that the woman is freaking out. She's starting to really get erratic, really screamy, really cryy, and just starts to lose her mind, and she's not behaving normally. And she says that she's been acting like this ever since she saw the contents of a specific floppy disk. Yes, a floppy disk. This was back in that time. The disk, of course, has the smile.jpg image on it, which actually has never been seen, because if you see it, you'll start to go crazy and lose your mind and start to do, you know, homicidal things. The only images that people have seen are like recreations based on the original image, which kind of gives it a more terrifying vibe that you've never seen the actual original one. Even though these other ones are creepy, imagine how much creepier the original one was. It's said that viewing this image incites full insanity, and the only way to stay alive after viewing the image is to spread it to others, as many as you can. And that's also how the image spreads. People are so desperate to stay alive that they have to show others and try to trick them into seeing it. Once you see it and you start going crazy, the Smile Dog will then visit your dreams when you're trying to sleep at night and convince you to spread it to all your friends and all your family and to as many people as possible. And because of this really weird way of transmitting this picture, some people believe that the original picture was of the real devil, like an image of the devil. And it started way back in time, and now it's devolved into this. So it's the same premise, I guess. I mean, that's just slightly terrifying that this whole thing might have been started by a real picture of the devil. But this old woman, or Mary, I forgot to mention her name earlier, my bad, is not the only person or the first person to see this image. And here's an excerpt from the author's article. There are unverified rumors of smile.jpg showing up in the early days of the internet, and even one persistent tale that in 2002, a hacker flooded the forums of a humor and satire website, Something Awful, with a deluge of smile.dog pictures, rendering rendering almost half of the forum's users at the same time epileptic. Those who claim to have seen the smile.jpg often weakly joke that they were far too busy to save a copy of the picture to their own hard drive. However, all alleged victims offer the same description of the photo. A dog-like creature, usually described as appearing similar to a Siberian husky, illuminated by the flash of a camera, sits in a dim room, the only background detail that is visible being a human hand extending from the darkness near the left side of the frame. The hand is empty, but is usually described as beckoning. Of course, most attention is given to the dog, or dog creature, as some victims are more certain than others about what they've claimed to have seen. The muzzle of the beast is reputably split in a wide grin, revealing 2 rows of very white, very straight, very sharp, very human-looking teeth." End quote. So the author apparently got multiple emails after breaking Mary's story from people who claimed to see the smile.dog image themselves. Some of them creepily trying to send the picture to the author himself for him to get infected with it. One of the emails said, quote, "I found your email address through a mailing list. Your profile said you are interested in Smile Dog. I have saw it, and it's not as bad as everyone says it is, and I have sent it to you here, just spreading the word, smiley face," which is like, that's not even a convincing lie, brother. That's not even a good way to lie about it. If you were gonna send it, you probably should send like a normal email and then have it there at the bottom. Don't just say that, "No, it wasn't that bad," after hundreds of people apparently went insane. Like, he's not gonna believe you, bro. The creepypasta, of course, eventually ends with the author himself posting the smile.dog picture, meaning that he has been infected with it and has now spread it to thousands of people and all of you, driving anyone who views it to the point of insanity. Ah, that's a good one, bro. It's a good little prank there. A little joke. I'm going to get rid of my dog right now. Now, as expected, this image spread through the internet like wildfire because, admittedly, it's very unnerving. It's actually really scary to look at. And the entire lore of the creepypasta was also pretty interesting to millions of people. As a funny bit to older folks, but a horrifying death sentence to children. Kids who sheepishly looked at the image and genuinely thought that they were going to get hounded by the devil and go crazy and have to spread it to other people in order to stay alive. Ones who truly believed that their life was over after their friend shoved the picture in their face. This picture traumatized a generation, some might say, much like the other pastas in this list. But they did all this in the sweetest, most nostalgic way possible. And those are the creepypastas from the early 2000s that raised a generation. And they probably traumatized an entire group of kids who had unsupervised internet access. I'm sure that was totally great for our psyche. Congrats, you heathen! You have just watched a random 21-year-old talk about creepypastas for half an hour. You feel good about yourself now. Seriously though, thank you for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed this style and vibe. I'm gonna try to do more like this here on Spoogly. If you want more, leave a like. I would love to do it. Thank you so much for watching. I'm definitely gonna dive more into the internet mystery side of things and other ARG type stuff. Turn post notices on for that if you are interested. I love and appreciate you all, and I will catch you in the next video. Peace.